Service in Raleigh. It's Nick Petro with your briefing for Central North Carolina as it relates to Hurricane Ian and its ultimate effects and impacts on Central North Carolina. For those who might be viewing this on YouTube after the fact, remember this information is only relevant for Central North Carolina. Again, as of 11:30 a.m. Wednesday, September 28th. Okay, so the basic status right now. Let me just kind of jump over to some web pages here. I'm gonna basically use a lot of web pages here, do it a little differently than I normally do with my slides. Keep in mind, I will be emailing out slides and posting them to our web page, but there's a lot of other great information that I want to share. But essentially, here's the latest radar, and the numbers you see on the map there are recent wind gusts, so you can get a sense of, how things are getting pretty well, heading downhill. Even more so. It's already been pretty windy and heavy rain and devastating across the west central and southwest Florida. But the eye wall is just now starting to approach Sanibel Island and that general vicinity, the Port Charlotte area. So obviously this is going to be a destructive, catastrophic. It's a Category 4 hurricane, and things are just going to continue to go downhill from there. So here's the 11 o'clock advisory just recently released, and the Hurricane Center noted maximum sustained winds around 155, which makes it on the very, very top end of Category 4. So that's a catastrophic hurricane. You'll notice that the track is pretty close to what it had been, but compared to yesterday, you'll notice off the northeast coast of Florida and off the coast of Georgia, the track goes back over water, and that's been the main trend in the last 24 hours, is a little bit of an eastward shift. I want to emphasize, I know just about everybody who's watching this live knows this already, but I want to emphasize it again for folks who are new and maybe folks who are watching this after the fact on YouTube, that please don't get consumed by the cone and whether you're in or out of the cone. Okay, the cone only represents where the center of the storm could go. It does not bake any information in terms of who or where can see impacts. Remember, bad weather, hazardous weather, rain, and all the other impacts that occur with tropical storms and hurricanes can occur well outside the cone. So please don't get too wrapped up in the cone, because even though half of Central North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, for example, is not in the cone, but you can bet sure well that that Eastern North Carolina is going to see impacts. So anyway, I wanted to just emphasize that this just represents where the center of the storm may go. Here's a website that I stumbled across recently, and has some nice tools here. So anyway, this is a past 24-hour loop of radar reflectivity, and notice at the very end of the loop, look what happens. Kind of a sharp jog to the right, to the east, however you want to describe it, a little bit of a turn, if you will. And that's sort of been a little bit of a trend we've seen, is that the models, some of the models, not all of them, but many of the models are a little bit further east and take that center back out over the Atlantic, compared to official forecasts and tracks that we saw yesterday. So a couple things I want to point out here using my favorite drawing tools here. You see how the precip extends way away from the center? Well, there's an old cold front, that gave us and is giving us the cooler, very pleasant weather we're seeing right now. Low humidity, pleasant temperatures. That's thanks to this cold front that moved through a couple days ago, and that cold front just stalled. And that's, and you'll notice, look at the way sometimes people call this the buzz saw. Notice the flow around it, right? It's basically a deep southerly flow, which is pumping moisture back to the northwest and over top this boundary. And that's what sets the stage for rain development. And that's going to be the case. As this system lifts off to the north and northeast, then this setup right here is going to eventually move closer to the coast, and we're going to get into some of this rain. This shield of rain right here that I'm drawing is going to eventually make its way closer to the coast and move in across our area starting early in the day Friday. Okay, so let me clear that drawing. Go back to my pointer here, and one way I can convey this is through model data. Okay, now we don't like to focus on any one given model, but just for the sake of demonstration here and how this will progress, I want to share this particular model is the European model, and I'm going to put on here radar reflectivity simulation. So the background image you see here is reflectivity simulation, where the model thinks that where the precipitation will occur. So anyway, let me go ahead and step forward in time. So that's basically the current time, and you can see that plume of rain off to the northeast that's connected to the front that I was telling you about. And watch what happens as it lifts off to the north, as the center of the storm lifts off to the north and northeast. That plume of moisture and the old front and the rain that's occurring along it will eventually lift north into the state, into our state. And you can see the time frame here is 09Z UTC Friday. That's basically 5 a.m. Friday. So rain may begin as early as pre-sunrise Friday. And as I step forward in time, and we're going to have 3-hour jumps between each step forward, you can see, watch how during the daytime Friday, the rain spreads north and westward across the state in central North Carolina. This time frame right here is Friday afternoon. Now, clearly where you see these yellows, that's basically indicative of heavier rain bands. And remember, flash flooding occurs generally when the rainfall rates are very high. Okay, if it was just a gradual rain spread out over a long period of time, then we wouldn't have to worry so much about flash flooding. But we worry about flash flooding when the rain comes down real hard in a short period of time. So obviously there will be a flash flood risk with this event, and it looks like the heavier, more potent downpours, as conveyed here by this simulation. And by the way, this is Friday evening into roughly midnight or shortly after midnight, Friday night into Saturday morning. That's when we start to get into the really higher rainfall rates. So the bottom line is it looks like the risk for flash flooding will increase as the day on Friday progresses. Okay, rain will move in early on the day Friday, and then the heavier bands will come in later in the day, and that's when we think the greater risk for flash flooding will be late in the day, evening into the overnight, Friday night into Saturday morning hours. Okay, this time frame right here is 5 a.m. Saturday, 8 a.m. Saturday, and then this is 10 a.m. Saturday. And notice what happens here at 10 a.m. Saturday. There's basically dry air on the backside of the storm that will begin to kind of wrap in and wrap around. So look how, like, across eastern South Carolina, southeast North Carolina, we see basically a little bit of a drying out south of that yellow line I just drew. Well, that's because some drier air is forecast to move in on the backside and wrap into it. So, and we've seen this signal in the models the last couple of days. This time frame right here is 2 p.m. Saturday, 5 p.m. Saturday, and Saturday evening. And basically the bottom line is that by Saturday late afternoon, we should begin to see the heaviest rain lift to our northwest into our east. It's almost like splitting. The heaviest rain is going to split. Some will go to our east, some will go to our northwest, and we're going to see a little bit of drying from south to north across central North Carolina later in the day on Saturday. Okay, so basically the heaviest period of rain looks like it'll fall from Friday afternoon through Saturday morning. That's when we think the bulk of our rain will fall. And then as we continue, this is Saturday evening, Saturday night, and look what happens. The center of the storm becomes real baggy and real kind of just becoming disorganized and essentially falling apart. But there's still some rain associated with it. And it looks like it'll be more just scattered, lighter rain that from time to time will move across central North Carolina late Saturday night and Sunday, and perhaps even into Monday This time frame right here is Sunday night, and then this is Monday morning. So we might be dealing with off and on rain right through Monday, as the remnants, the sort of the dissipating remnants move across. But again, I want to emphasize that the heaviest rain will occur with this stage right here. Let me back up here and let me show you this stage right here. This is Friday afternoon and Friday evening as those heavier bands move through. Okay, so in terms of how much rainfall, let me put the total rainfall amount on here, and this is event total, and I'll just fast forward to basically late in the day Sunday. This is late Sunday, and you can see the model. Let me lower this a little bit so you can see the legend at the bottom. The red represents 4 inches and greater. Okay, and then this purple represents 1.5 inches to up to 4 inches. So you could see there's an area, because that rain splits, a big batch goes to our east and a big batch kind of lifts off to our northwest. It looks like the heaviest rain may indeed fall near the coast and perhaps to our west in the foothills and the mountains. And that leaves a little bit of a lesser amount across central North Carolina, but still, several inches of rain, 2, 3, maybe as much as 4 inches of rain, especially as you go east, along and east of I-95 where there may be heavier amounts. So again, is 3 or 4 inches of rain going to cause flash flooding? It could, if it comes down in heavy downpours. Is it going to cause river flooding? If it does, we expect the river flooding to be fairly minor, okay? And then finally, the last thing I want to use this model to convey is the wind potential. And let me get rid of the rainfall amounts here, and let me put on here some wind. And this is a sort of a wind forecast. And again, I'm showing the European model, but essentially the American model, the GFS model, is very similar. There's not a whole lot of difference. They both show pretty much the same thing. There's subtle differences, but anyway, so this is Friday. Let me fast forward to Friday morning. And Friday morning, you could see the darker the shade of blue, the higher the winds. So clearly there's going to be some really gusty winds at the coast. And remember, which way does wind go around low pressure? It goes counterclockwise. So there's going to be a persistent onshore fetch east to maybe even northeast of flow, basically hitting the coastal areas of North Carolina. This could result in not only some gusty winds at the coast, but also some rough surf, dangerous seas, obviously dangerous rip currents, and quite frankly, even perhaps some overwash near the coastal areas, particularly at high tide. So there may be obviously some low-end surge issues at the coastal areas with that flow. But notice how quickly the winds drop off inland. We're only looking at this, basically, as you look in central North Carolina, we're only looking at wind speeds of maybe 15, 20 miles per hour. Maybe in some of those bands, look how the blue legend at the bottom conveys those speeds. If one of those heavier bands, could potentially result in a 25, 30 mile per hour wind gusts. And essentially, if that happens coupled with wet ground, there could be a few trees that are downed across central North Carolina. Don't think that's going to be a big problem, but trees that are dead or already leaning could be an issue. That's always a good safety thing to do. Preparation thing to do. If there's time and you have dead trees on your property or leaning trees, you might want to consider trying to get those trees taken out or down. If you have the ability to do so before, not only this storm but any storm. So anyway, so that addresses the wind aspect. The other thing I want to address is the severe thunderstorm, or I should say tornado potential. And this is the Storm Prediction Center Day 3 outlook. And you'll notice that the Day 3 outlook highlights a marginal risk basically east of I-95, right here, this green. And basically the concern is with any tropical system, there's a lot of low-level turning in the winds. And, oftentimes we have these quick hitting, very fast spin up, very brief lasting tornadoes that develop. So this is on Friday. The potential, it could linger into Saturday morning, in Saturday, but and let me see if the day 4 indicates that. Yeah, day 4 basically says the predictability is too low. So so we'll see what the tomorrow update for day 4 is, which will be tomorrow's day 3. But the bottom line is on Friday, in this area shaded in darker green, we'll have a better chance to see one of these isolated quick spin up tornadoes. Okay, and that could be basically later in the day, Friday evening into Friday night. Okay. In terms of a rainfall, again, this is courtesy of our national center up in DC with rainfall. And let's just take it day by day. Today, dry. Thursday, you could see there's a suggestion. And by the way, these maps, in case you didn't catch it, these are rainfall amounts. And you can see, you know, Thursday. This is Thursday's map, but it's mainly geared toward Friday morning, like after midnight, Thursday night into Friday. And then Friday's rainfall amounts, you could see the heavier amounts closer to the coast and to our south. And then it splits. Remember, I talked about on Saturday that split with the drier air coming in behind the low and on the backside of the low. That again, that's that drier air looping in, and then you have one chunk of the rain heading off to the east as dry air comes in, and another heading off to the west towards the mountains with sort of a little bit of a break in between. So again, that's I mean that's good for central North Carolina, but that's bad news for the complex terrain where, you know, flash flooding risk is greater and mudslides, and certainly anybody that gets higher rain will have a greater flash flood potential. Here we go on Sunday with the leftovers and remnants, a better focus for rain to our north. And then that rain risk just continues right on into early next week. When you add up 7 days worth of rain, you can see there's a little minimum over central North Carolina. But even though that's a minimum, that's still 2, 3, maybe as much as 4 inches of rain, with higher amounts again near the coast, up to 6 inches, maybe even 7 inches along the coast, and higher amounts, 6, maybe 7 inches out over the mountains. So so that's what we have in terms of rainfall amounts. I wanted to share this statewide map because I wanted to share the wind aspect of it. And you can get these maps at weather.gov/Raleigh/NC. Okay, weather.gov/Raleigh/NC. And if we look at the 3-day maximum sustained winds, this only runs out through Saturday morning. Okay, now keep in mind, we expect the highest winds to occur late on Friday. So this should capture most of the period of windiest time. But we're expecting the highest sustained winds to basically be in the 20s and the highest gusts to be basically around 40, okay? So again, this isn't consistent or persistent, I should say. This is what the maximum we could see. So, you know, when you couple 40-mile-per-hour wind gust with a wet, soggy ground, there could be a few trees that are downed. And again, the timing for these types of winds would be Friday afternoon, Friday evening into Friday night, okay, for these magnitude of winds. All right, lastly, well, not lastly, almost lastly, river potential. How about river flooding when all this water finds its way into the rivers, okay? And unfortunately, our official forecast doesn't go out far enough in time. So what we use is an ensemble approach, a model approach, and this is an ensemble of simulated river forecasts based on the range of rain that we could possibly get. And you'll notice that this is the Neuse River at Clayton, and you'll notice the bulk of the ensemble members are barely hit minor flooding. And that's what you would expect with 2 to 4 inches of rain coming out of a very dry summer, okay? These outliers here that go up into moderate or major, those are only 3 out of 42 models that would suggest anything worse than minor. It would take double-digit rainfall amounts to produce this type of flooding. And right now, we just don't see the potential for us to get that amount of rain. Here's Goldsboro, and again, a similar story once it loads here. The vast majority of the models don't even hit flood stage. Again, what you would expect with 2 to 4 inches of water. Let's go west just for completeness here. We'll take a look at the Yadkin, and And again, we're not even close to flood stage. The ensemble, none of the ensemble members show any flooding there. And then finally, let's go south on the Cape Fear River to Fayetteville and a quick look at these ensemble members. And yeah, flood stage is off the chart here. So what this means is everything's below flood stage on the Cape Fear. So the bottom line here is, 2 to 4 inches of rain is not going to give us any problems on the rivers. Okay, we would have to get above 10 inches or more of rain to start see notable problems. Okay, so I covered just about everything you could think of except for one last thing, and that's the caveats. What are some alternate scenarios? Everything I just laid out could change. I know you're probably saying, wait, that was pretty thorough, but what if that all goes out the window? And that, I mean, this is the weather, sometimes stuff like that happens, but there has been a notable shift in the ensemble members. Remember, the track has been shifting further east lately, and notice how about half of the ensemble members keep the track of the center offshore and longer. If that trend continues, okay, and what we're looking at right there is the American model ensembles, and like I said, roughly half of the ensemble members keep it out over water and show the center not going up into South Carolina, but going up across eastern North Carolina. If that happens, clearly that will make impacts much greater and much worse for coastal North Carolina. And that 2 to 4 inches of rain I talked about, all bets are off with that. It could be more. It could be less even. It just depends on where that dry air sets up. But I'll tell you one thing, if it stays offshore longer and makes a sort of another landfall, if you will, further north, then I would expect the wind threat to be much greater, particularly across eastern North Carolina. Overwash and surge issues to be much greater across eastern North Carolina. For us, probably more rain than what I just laid out. So we need to stay tuned. There's still some changes that can happen. The European model ensembles, they're showing the same thing. There's a trend eastward, and about half of the ensemble members are further offshore, although most of those ensemble members still tuck it back into South Carolina, which would basically mean every one of these ensemble members support the scenario I just laid out in the last few minutes in terms of rainfall amount. Okay, it's these further east that concern me, that everything I just laid out in the last 10 minutes, might need to be changed if these further east simulations end up being the case. Okay, so I wanted to show that just because there still is some time for things to change. So that said, let me jump down to a quick summary here, and we'll wrap up our briefing with this. So confidence is high that we're going to get some bad weather. Bad meaning mainly bad rain, heavy rain, and possible flash flooding. However, our confidence is moderate at best regarding impacts because of the track. So, but based on today's official forecast and based on the expectation of where the center is going to go, we expect 2 to 6, probably more like 2 to 4 inches of rain is still expected to fall from late Friday through Sunday, I should say. Heavy downpours could result in localized flash flooding at stream creeks, urban areas, and or low-lying areas that are prone to flash flooding. The typical low spots. Again, remember the time frame for that, when we expect any flash flooding to occur, is mainly late on Friday night, and early Saturday. Looks like the things kind of lessen up on Saturday afternoon. Okay. There's a potential for some damaging winds, gust up to 40, gusts, Friday through Saturday. And then again, those weak or dead trees may come down, and that could lead to isolated power outages. What about the tornado threat? Again, that's mainly east of I-95. A 1 in 5 risk for that, mainly late Friday through Saturday, probably mostly midday Saturday, maybe even Saturday afternoon, particularly along the coast. But remember that tropical cyclone tornadoes are usually very brief. They only last a minute, if that, and they don't usually come with a lot of lead time, just because they're so quick hitting. So when we do issue tornado warnings, know that you may not have the 5, 10, 15 minutes to get ready. You may only have, literally seconds to seek shelter. So the moment you get a tornado warning, don't delay seeking shelter, okay? And then finally, we'll keep an eye on the rivers, but right now it's going to take a lot more rain than 2 to 4 inches to cause us big problems, okay? We'll keep an eye on that. And then finally, I didn't have a bullet here. I'll put it in for these slides, but keep in touch. Check updates. Those ensemble members shifting east do cause me a bit of concern that the details I just laid out here might need some changes should that further east track come to pass. Okay, but based on the expectations right now, what I just laid out in these 4 bullets is what we're expecting. Okay, so because obviously this is a fluid situation, obviously we'll be pushing out updates as needed, and sometimes more frequently than other times, but we'll certainly be providing updates. You can count on that, and you can also count on briefings, another series of these briefings every day until this thing ends. So 11:30, same time, same place, tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, even Sunday, we're going to do one of these briefings. And even Monday with our routine Monday briefing. We'll be here every day at Monday at 11:30, same time, same place for the updates. If things really kind of go off the rails and it looks like it's going to get much worse than what I just outlined, we may sprinkle in an extra webinar or two, but we'll decide that if needed. So anyway, that is our 11:30 briefing here on this Wednesday, the 28th of September, for Ian's impacts on Central North Carolina.